Okay, so if you're listening to the recording, you lost out on this first slide. Take a Command-Shift-4 and take a screenshot of this and read the slide because we're moving on. I apologize. Now that we introduced the players, now let's talk about what is Sefer HaMisvot. So, as the title indicates, it is a book of the 613 mitzvot. Now, you might think that that's silly, right? We know there's 613. You just open the book, open the Torah, and just start counting them. And in fact, it's actually extremely complicated because the question is, what counts as a mitzvah? What are the character traits of a mitzvah, essentially, to be counted? We'll talk about how we know that there's 613 actually in this class. But what else happens? What else goes on in Sefer HaMitzvot aside from listing the mitzvot? He includes a brief description of the mitzvah, tells you what is the basic level of accomplishment or fulfillment of that mitzvah. He brings you the pasuk that's its source. Sometimes it's different than the pasuk he brings in Mishneh Torah, which is an interesting dynamic. That's not going to be the case today, but it is something to look out for. And he brings the parameters of the mitzvah. Who's obligated? Is it men and women? Is it Kohanim or Leviim? Is it, are children involved at all, right? Hakel, children as well. When is the mitzvah? Is it only applicable in the land of Israel? Is it only applicable when there's like Yovel? There's only applicable when we have a Sanhedrin. Where is it applicable, right? Is it only in the Bet HaMikdash? Is it only in the land of Israel? Is it only in Yerushalayim? And the last thing he tells us is what masechtot or masechet, more information about this mitzvah can be found in. It's just not always so pashut. It's not like Sukkah.
Ed, he wrote this, Rambam wrote it before Mishneh Torah or after? I forget.
Why are you yelling, Charles? We're all here. We're all right here.
Was it before?
I heard you. You don't need to say it again. We're going to see that in the next slide. He wrote it actually right before. He wrote it, and we'll see this in the next slide, he wrote it as a way to prep for Mishneh Torah. We'll see what that means in the next slide. This was
saying, why did he need this if he wrote Mishneh Torah? It seems like everything could be covered in the second book.
I'll tell you in a second why he tells us why he wrote it. In his introduction to Sefer HaMitzvot, he tells you exactly what the purpose of Sefer HaMitzvot is, and why he wrote it. So we'll get there in a second. It was written in Arabic originally, Judeo-Arabic, which means that it's using Hebrew letters, but in Arabic. If you still want to see the original Arabic, Rav Yosef Kafa has put it out has it, so you could do that. Mossad Harav Kook. It's for you, Teddy. The Mishneh Torah the Sefer HaMitzvot is somewhat structured in terms of how he goes in order of mitzvot, but it's also somewhat unstructured, which means to say, there's a general flow, but then he surprises you, which means to say it doesn't go in the order of Mishneh Torah completely. It also definitely starts with the most important mitzvot, at least according to the Rambam, right? It's belief in God, fear of God, love of God, But then as soon as he's done with that, he moves into, things which take a person like Kriyat Shema, Tefillin, and then all of a sudden he'll go into a different category, which are like, why did you go from that to that? And it's unclear, right? So I haven't ever read anyone, no one that I've ever learned with has been able to tell me if there's been any real attempt. Rav Tanchum Gold has told me that there's no definitive structure, so I'm taking his word that there is no definitive structure. And this last piece is very perhaps controversial, but I do think it's worth discussing, is it might be the Rambam's most successful work. What I mean by that is, it might be the work that accomplished what he wanted to accomplish as set out in his introduction, which means to say the Mishneh Torah is an incredible book. The Moreh Nevuchim is an incredible book, right? I don't need to say that. But did it do what the Rambam said he wanted it to do? Debatable. Almost certainly, we're going to see what the Rambam wanted the Sefer HaMitzvot to do, and he says, I promise you it's going to do it. And it seems to be that it really is successful. Most people nowadays, whenever we're talking about counting mitzvot, we always go back to the Sefer HaMitzvot. And which is important when we think about what's a mitzvah, what's not a mitzvah, deoraita, derabanan, how do you count mitzvot? The Rambam Sefer HaMitzvot became the new book. And we're going to see what book it was trying to replace. Here we go. So this is from the Rambam's introduction himself, and here we'll get to Charles's question. And he says like this. I skipped already. It's a lot longer, but I'm just skipping a lot. You see the dots. There's a lot more to be said here, but this is not our topic for the entire time. So he's describing not the Sefer HaMisvot, but the Mishneh Torah. And he's saying, I was trying to figure out how to organize it. And he says, maybe I was going to organize it like the Mishnah and have Seder Moed and do exactly like the Mishnah. But then he said, you know what? I'm not going to do exactly like the Mishnah. I'm going to do it similar to the Mishnah. And he says, I'm going to break it down into halachot, halachot lulav, halachot tefillin, halachot mezuzah, halachot tzitzit. And then I'm going to divide it into prakim. This perek is going to deal with what defines a sukkah. Next perek is going to deal with how much I have to eat in a sukkah. Next perek is going to, he didn't just throw it, it became very organized, like the Mishnah, but not exactly in the same division as the Mishnah, right? There's no baba kama, right? He would write halachot nizke mamon, something like that, right? And now he comes and says, and because I wanted to do this, I needed to do something. And this is a very interesting window into the Rambam's mind. It's almost also a window into his own self-humility. He says, I realized that I needed to do, before I wrote the Mishneh Torah, a tehila pitichat ha-sefer, misefer mitzvot, mispar ha-mitzvot kulam, so I could count all the mitzvot. Aseh velo ta'aseh. I wanted to just list all the mitzvot. And if you open up any standard Mishneh Torah, before the first words of the page, there's a minyan ha-mitzvot. That's part of the Mishneh Torah. He said, I needed to do that. And then he realized, and he said, and why did he do this? He says, Ad shetavo chalukat se'er, velo timalet mitzvah shelo nashlim hadibur b'dinah, ze kulo lihishamer shelo yi'ader v'imalet mimeni davar shelo adaber bo. I was nervous. I wasn't going to remember every single mitzvah, and I wanted to make sure that my Mishneh Torah covered every single mitzvah and its details. So the first thing I needed to do was write down every single mitzvah. And then he says, after I wrote down the minyan ha-mitzvot, it's called the list of the mitzvot, זה העניין, השתדלתי לעשות הספר ולזכור המצוות כולם, זיכרון מוחלט, ומספרם בפתיחת הספר. Once I did all that, התעוררתי אל השורש שכבר עלה בדעתי זה שנים רבות. Here's a window into his own mind. He says, I got reawakened to an idea that I had already for many years, and here it is. והוא במה שמונים מן המצוות, הנה נשתבשו בו רבים בעניינים, לא אוכל לספר גודל גינותם. Here the Rambam does not spare words. He says, I wanted to count the mitzvot because I see that everyone has basically screwed it up. I can't even tell you how bad their mistakes are. And he says, because everyone that has tried to put together a book about the mitzvot, nimshechu kulam achar divrei bal halachot gedolot. He continues and says, v'chein kol ma sheshamati ha'azharot. Right? People write these poetic azharot, counting all the mitzvot. Rabot ha'mispar. There's so many of them. Be'eretz Sefarad in Spain. He says, nehevchu sirai alai. My pains are multiplied because of these books. And now he says, ve'en hashimam, but it's not their fault. And here's a very critical, tough line. Ki machabrehem hayu mishorerim lo rabbanim. The people who wrote them are poets. They're not rabbis, so they don't know how to do anything. Right? V'hara'ui lahem mitzad melachtam. And their job is not to be accurate. It's the hishlimu me'aravut ha'ma'amar v'yofi asidur. Theirs is to make it rhyme. So they don't really care if, I just remember randomly one of the azharot ends with katsota et kapah, right? I don't remember what the whole thing is, but whether or not the katsota et kapah is its own mitzvah, he doesn't really bother the mishorer. He just knows he needs to rhyme with something with right? אבל במובן הדברים נמשכו בו אחר בהלכות גדולות וזולתו מן הרבנים המתאחרים. Good. And now he says, when I realized this, and I knew, and this is something that he wrote it 950 years ago, but it's true, it's as true now as it was true then. He says, I knew that if I'm going to be, come in with this new fad of how to count mitzvot and give a new count and, be new, he says, mibilti re'aya, if I did it without proving it, without proving my case for every single mitzvah, הנה הקורא הראשון שיקראהו יחייב מחשבתו שזה טעות ותהיה אצלו ראיית הטעות היותו בחילוף מה שזכר פלוני ופלוני. כי זהו שכל רוב הסגולות בזמננו, זה כי לא יבחנו המאמר בעניינו, אבל בהסכימו למאמר מי שקדם בלתי בחינת המאמר הקודם. He says, the majority of people, when they're deciding what is true, will just go with the first thing that they heard. Oh, that disagrees with what the other guy wrote, and he came before you. Right, just to tell a little bit of a funny story, I heard this in the name of Rabbi Soloveitchik, so I can't tell you if it's 100% accurate, or maybe it was in the name of a different YU Rosh Yeshiva. But basically, he was asked a question, a halakha question, and the guy said, but this guy said something else. And it wasn't a Rishon or someone who lived 300 years ago, someone who lived in the previous generation, but who was no longer in this planet and who had written a lot. And so the rabbi said, I know, but you asked me. So he said, how could you argue on him? He said, how about this? I'll write my answer in a book, and when I die, then you can use my psak, if that's what you need to hear, right? Meaning to say, just because he wrote it and you heard it first, and he's dead now, doesn't make it any more right than what I'm saying, right? And so that's what he's saying here. Therefore, the Rambam says, Ra'iti shira'uil she'akdim lifnei hachibur, before I do minyan hamitzvot, I need to do Sefer HaMisvot. And what am I going to do here? How is it appropriate to count? And so the Rambam, in his introduction, actually goes through 14 shorashim. Now, if you ever see a standard Sefer HaMitzvot, which I have right here, can you guys see me, or you only see the screen share? You can see it? Good. So it's actually interesting. A lot of times you open up Sefer HaMitzvot and you think the book's going to start in the beginning. Anyone who's ever opened it realizes that this is how much of the book. It's almost a third of the book, and probably even more, is all the Hakdama. Because the Hakdama includes 14 principles, which is really where the juice is in these Hakdamot, where he writes 14 principles of how to count. Rambam probably had some affinity with the number 14, also 14 books in Mishneh Torah. 14 principles of, too bad Michael Franco's not here for that. He likes the number shout out. 14 principles of what decides what is a mitzvah. And that's really where a lot of the beef comes in with the Bahag, because the Bahag, in those principles, the Rambam is very takifi. Basically, almost every principle he says, V'lo kamo shekatav Bahag, and I saw that the Bahag counted this as a mitzvah. A lot of times he doesn't call him out by name, but if you read the introduction, you know exactly who he's talking about. Okay? And then he says here, and this is what I said before, that Rambam knew that this book was going to win, right? When I prove it, right? Very confident in his word. He said, then it will be clear to everyone that anyone who counts differently than us is the mistaken one, and not vice versa, which he said was going to happen if he didn't prove it. So with that introduction, now we need to just be fair to our counterpart, the Ramban, who also wrote a very short introduction. And in his introduction, he tells us what he's going to do in his Hasagot on the Ramban. And it's exactly what I told you he was going to do. Amar Moshe Bar Nachman. The Ramban must have had some sort of affinity for defending the previous generation, and he talks about it here. He says, Kilev kol navon ikachena v'chacham v'achor yishabechena. Here's the goal. Ulamed zechut al harishonim ufaresh divrei hageonim ki hem lanu bilimud hatalmud pina ve'amud hem asher horonu v'lamdunu ma shehe'emidunu al darchei haTorah ushvilam. Right? He's not into this newfound, we think we're so smart, we can argue on the Geonim, disrespecting the Geonim, the Kadmonim. The Ramban wants to make sure that people know that they are still the Amud and the Pina of the Talmud. And so in his Hasagot, he's going to many times attempt to prove why the Bahag was correct and the Rambam is incorrect in his counting. He actually goes so far as to, in his Hasagot, he also has sections where he says, additional section at the end where he calls them Shechechat Halavin, right, or Yitura Mitzvot, where he basically says these are all the mitzvot that Rambam forgot. One of the, some famous ones, if you ever notice in the back of some Sidurim, it says, 10 things you have to remember. Those things are all basically based on the Ramban, where he says basically you have to remember Amalek every day, you have to remember Miriam every day. Those are mitzvot deoraita, right? Zechor Yitziam, well, Yitziam Mitzrayim, the Rambam counts as well. But the Ramban has a whole list of things that the Rambam forgot, and then he has a whole bunch of things that he says the Rambam has too many. One thing that I'm going to put in parentheses here, and I bet you this was going to be Teddy's question that he was just about to ask, is that if I remember correctly, I didn't check this up. I will lean in there next time. The Rambam's count doesn't come out. The Ramban's count doesn't come out to 613. Meaning to say, if he agrees with the Rambam on all the other ones that he didn't say he forgot or that he added, his count doesn't come out to 613. So that's a story for another day, especially with what we're going to see now. But with that introduction, we are going to begin the first mitzvah of Sefer Mitzvot, which is also our first machloket between the Rambam and the Ramban. Although, spoiler alert, the Ramban himself is going to end up agreeing to the Rambam. But first he has to defend the Bahag. So we're going to see this. Joe, I don't know if you remember this. We did this like 3 years ago in SCA in the basement in Hathaway. I don't know if you remember that.
I do remember we did twice a week. But wait, quick question before that. You said before that you're going to mention the concept of the number 613 mitzvot.
Yes.
Can you discuss that just more in depth of just like the Tariag mitzvot that's mentioned in Bereshit?
What do you mean Tariag mitzvot in Bereshit?
Could
you
you
don't have Tariag mitzvot mentioned in Bereshit?
No. Okay. Could you mention the concept of the number 613?
Oh yeah, we're gonna get to that right now.
Okay.
It's a Gemara on Masechet Makot. We're gonna analyze that Gemara a little bit today, God willing. So here we go.
The question was actually going to be if he agrees with the Rambam. Does he defend Bahag? So it was in the second thing that you said.
If he agrees, if he ever agrees with the Rambam, would he still defend the Bahag? And the answer is yes. Sometimes he doesn't. Again, the Ramban. I cut off the end of his Hakdama. But it is important to know at the end of the Hakdama, he does say, I'm not going to show favoritism and I'm going to be completely honest in my halakha because at the end of the day, I forgot his exact lashon, but it's something like a lo yisab panim, something like that. That he's not going to show, if he thinks someone's right, he's going to say it. But at the end of the day, he does want to defend the Bahag. Okay. So here is first mitzvah in Sefer HaMitzvot. And he comes like this and says, Hu sivui asher sivanu l'ha'amin ha'elohut, to believe in God, to believe in the concept of God. L'ha'amin, we're going to see there's a little bit of a different formulation in Mishneh Torah le'edah that could be a function of the Arabic translation, because Arabic doesn't always directly translate into the same. I remember with Rabbi Labaton, alav shalom, we always used to stress that there's different types of knowledge in Arabic. And he used to be very fond of writing it on the board in the Arabic layers and saying, Ittiqad, and very funny handwriting he had. It looked like his English. For anyone that knows, Rabbi Levitan did not have good handwriting. And so to believe in God, and what does that entail? V'hu shena'amin sheyesh sham ilah v'siba. There is a cause, or we'll call it a cause and a reason, or a something that causes a change. Hu po'el l'chol hanimsaot, that acts upon all existing beings. V'hu omro yitaleh, and this mitzvah, the source of this mitzvah is Anochi Hashem Elokech. Now, this is not the end of what he wrote in the Sefer HaMitzvot. That's in the next slide. We're going to see the continuation. But I just want to compare it for a second to what he writes in Hilchot Yesodei HaTorah, Perek Aleph, Halachot Aleph through Vav. And there he says, Yisod HaYesodot ve'amud HaChochmot, and here's his formulation here. Ledash yesham matzui rishon v'hu mamsi kol nimsa. To know that there is a primal existence and who created all existences. Now, this is very common, for there to be slight differences between the Sefer HaMitzvot and the Mishneh Torah. We're not going to talk about these mitzvot because there's no real machlok between the Rambam and the Ramban, but in his description of love and fear of God, there's drastic differences. And we don't have time. We'll mention them in passing, but many different answers have been given. One is that this is written in Arabic. It's more for the layman. It's shorter. It's easier. Some just say that this in Sefer HaMitzvot, he's just telling you the basic definition. Where in Mishnah Torah, he's really telling you what is the essence of the mitzvah, the real depth of the mitzvah. And so you can see he goes on a whole tangent here, not tangent, but a whole description about the type of God we believe in. Meaning it's not just you believe in God, right? I could believe this duct tape is God, right? That doesn't mean I believe in God. I could believe that God is the sun. That's not believing in God, right? I could believe the sun took us out of Egypt, right? That's not enough, right? It has to be that you believe in a God that is non-physical. We're going to see all these things, right? And that he is the creator. Hu livado, here's his formulation here. Hu livado ha'emet ve'en le'acher amet ka'amitato. There's nothing at all that is similar in its existence and its truth as God. And now he says like this, takes him 5 halachot, and then he finally gets to it, and he says, Matzu yezeh hu Eloah ha'olam adon kol haaretz, and then halacha vav v'yidi'at davar zeh, knowing this idea, understanding it as a concept, and he doesn't say believing in it, but that's certainly part of it, is a mitzvah taseh sheneimar anochi Hashem Elokecha, and he brings the same pasuk. Question could be raised that why does he bring the pasuk of Anochi Hashem Elokecha? That doesn't seem to be a sivui, right? It's just an introduction, seemingly, right? Anochi Hashem Elokecha she'esaticha meretz Mitzrayim. Where's the commandment there? So that's something to keep in the back of our minds. But in continuing, he says this is continuation of Sefer HaMitzvot. So we just jumped to the Mishneh Torah just to see the contrast, but we're going to now jump back to the Sefer HaMitzvot, where he brings a proof, and he says, where do I know that this is a mitzvah from? Again, he said he was going to do this. He was going to bring a proof whenever there's, when it's like korban musafim and stuff, where it's just like, okay, there's a pretty explicit pasukim and no one's really going to argue. They're pretty short, but if there's any sort of controversy or anything that he wants to prove, he's going to bring the Gemarot and explain it. He says like this, Ubesof Gemar Makot, Amru, Tariag mitzvot ne'emru lo leMoshe meSinai. There are 613 mitzvot that were said to Moshe on Sinai. My kar'a, what's the pasuk? How do we know this? Torah siva lanu Moshe. Kilomar, says the Ramban, Minyan Torah is what? 611. V'hikshu al zeh b'gemara ve'amru, Torah b'gematria hachi havai. Torah is not the gematria 613. You just told me 611. Shit me'av achadzar havai. It's 611, it's not 613. V'ayta teshuvah, and this is the answer of the Gemara. Anochi v'lo yeh. The word, Anochi v'lo yeh, mepi ha'gevura shemanu. We heard those from God. Pasuk says, Torah sivalanu Moshe. 611 from Moshe. Anochi and lo yeh were from God. 613. Hine, says the Rambam. Hine kvar hitbaer lecha ki Anochi Hashem meklal shesh me'ot v'shlosh esrei mitzvot hu sivui be'emunah k'mo shebe'arnu. Right? If the Gemara says, Anochi v'lo yeh, completes the minyan of 613, what do you see? That clearly Anochi, according to the Gemara Makot, is one of the 613 mitzvot. Very good. Any questions? This is the Rambam. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy to understand. Any questions on the Rambam? We have one question, which is, Anochi doesn't seem to be a sivui. Any other questions, deeper questions about... maybe you want to ask, how could you command to believe in something, right? Don't ask that because we're not going to address it. So, sorry. No, we could say very simply, we have the same question with anything, right? Don't hate your brother. What do you mean? I hate him, right? What are you going to do? I hate him. So, too bad. No, it means that everyone cannot, you can't necessarily control an instinctual reaction to something, right? However, what you can control is whether or not you prevent yourself from allowing yourself to continue with that instinctual reaction. Right? I could feel jealousy for someone and say, oh, I really want his car, and then realize, self-reflect and say, okay, I put myself back and say, okay, I don't really want that. This is just my, insecurities talking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you wouldn't be violating the mitzvah. The more you indulge yourself, and it's it's sort of like exercising. The more you exercise, the stronger you get. So the more you're able to exercise, right? So too here, the more you exercise your we'll call it your willpower, your inner self, the more you're able to be in control, and the more you don't violate these mitzvot, the more you'll be able to protect yourself from ever violating these mitzvot, right? So that's just a little bit of an aside. So the same thing with believing in God, right? You take the steps that would need to be taken to achieve that belief, and that's what you got to do. And the more you learn, the more you'll want to believe. But it's not just, you don't just say, "Oh, I don't believe," and then move on, right? That's not we'll call it not acceptable. Okay, so now in order to understand the Gemara Makot, we really need to go back to where the Torah, right? The Torah tells us, "Anochi Hashem Elokecha asher hoseticha me'eretz Mitzrayim mibet avadim." Good, that's according to most interpretations, right? That's the first of the 10 commandments, devarim, really, not commandments. Okay, the next one is Lo yeh lecha elohim acharim al panai. Very good. And obviously, what? Why do we say that these are from God? Because why? See if anyone's paying attention. Why do we say these are from God? What about Zachor et Yom HaShabbat l'kadesho? Kabed et avicha ve'et imecha. Huh?
It says Anochi.
Good. Anochi and Al Panai. Very good. God is talking, kivyachol, right? Okay, we have a problem with that though, because then it says in Dal, Lo taseh lecha fesel v'chol timuna da ta 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 lo tishtachaveh da da ki Anochi Hashem Elokecha El Kana Poked avon avot al banim hashem v'aronim l'sonei. Seemingly God's talking for this entire situation here. And I got to tell you, there's a lot more than 2 commandments here, right? You got lo ta'aseh, you got lo tishtachaveh, you got lo ta'avdem. You got a problem, right? The Gemara seems to indicate, where does it say, right? Anochi v'lo yeh lecha mipi hagivura shemanu, which seems to be Anochi and lo yeh. And it's telling you those are 2 commandments which are mashlim the 613. So either there's a different explanation for why these are the ones counted, right, in this counting, or we're misunderstanding what Anochi and Lo Yeh means, right? Meaning maybe you read something else, I don't know, right? So that we're going to get to that now when we see the Rambam. Okay, good. Questions up until now? Good. Next is the Ramban, Hasaga on the Rambam, and he says like this. The first line that he says is actually very interesting. You read it and you don't think it's a critique of the Rambam, but if you read it a little bit more carefully, you realize it is. And it's so delicate. It's such a delicate and fine point, but it's such a deep machloket between them. It's scary. I don't know why it's scary. I shouldn't have said scary. It's incredible. Hamunah hazot b'dibur hazeh lo nefleti v'lo rechokahi. He says the Ramban, the belief, the faithfulness that Harambam is talking about in this mitzvah, the mitzvah of Anochi, is not difficult and not far away, right? This is a paraphrase of, right, Sefer Devarim. That whole thing, right? Lo b'shamayim, all that is part of that thing. V'chem b'divrei rabotenu zal, meforash shehu kabbalat malchuto yit'aleh. V'hi emunat ha'elahut. He says, you don't need fancy philosophical proofs. You don't need all these hula hoops, cosmological, ontological, teleological. You accept God as your king? Yes, that's the mitzvah. That's a simple thing. So it seems like he's just tweaking a little bit, just saying, oh, the Rambam, explaining the Rambam a little bit. But if you understand deeper, he's really making a critique on, if I could just bring it back 1 second, he's really making a critique on this. Right? What are we believing in? That there's an ilah and a sibah, that there's some sort of cause. What are you talking about, Rambam? That's way too complicated. That's way too philosophical. What is it, says the Ramban? Kabbalat malchuto yit'aleh. That's the mitzvah. That's the essence of it. Sure, you want to learn more about what the nature of this king that you believe in is and all that. Of course, the Ramban was a philosopher himself. But in terms of what the mitzvah is, says the Ramban, it's kabbalat malchuto. Okay? And now he brings the mechilta and he says, Amru b'mechilta, and this is to prove his point, that what it means is Kabbalat Malchuto. We're going to see this is a very important mechilta. It's going to serve us multiple purposes. Lo yeh lecha Elohim acharim al panai. Lama ne'emar. Why was that dibur said? What do you mean, why was it said? What kind of question is it? So look how the mechilta takes it. It says, L'fishu omer Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Since it said Anochi Hashem Elokecha, Sorry, lama ne'emar lefishu omer, right? Meaning, once I say I'm God, why do I need to say don't have any other God before me? Hello, obviously, right? Mashal lemelech shenichnas lemedina. Amru lo avadav gezor alehem gezerot. So it says it's a mashal to a king who enters into the city, and his servants tell him, why don't you make some new decrees, right? Amar lahem. So the king responds to his servants, Kishikiblu malchuti exor alehem gezerot. Once they accept my kingdom, once they accept that I'm their ruler, then I'll start making gezerot. If they don't accept me as the king, right? If you don't accept the authority by which the laws are coming from, why am I accepting the laws at all? Why would I accept them at all, right? I mean, if you, right, Martin Luther King famously said, laws do not stand by their own merit. A law doesn't have to be followed if it's immoral, right? So to here, right? If I don't believe in the authority that's giving the law, what I need to keep. Kach amar makom Yisrael. Anochi Hashem Elokecha lo yeh lecha elohim acharim al panai. Ani hu shekibaltem alechem malchuti b'Mitzrayim. Amru hen. Right? Yes, and did you accept me as king in Egypt? They said yes. Then he responds, Keshem shekibalten malchuti kiblu gezerotai. The same way you accepted me as king, accept my gezerot. It says that Rambam, you see from this that what? The essence of the mitzvah of Anochi Hashem Elokecha is accepting God as king. Good. That's the Ramban just expanding a little bit on what the mitzvah is. And now he comes and says, V'im kozeh, with all this I just said, Ra'iti lebal halachot shelo mana ota mitzvah b'chalal tariyag. Right? He didn't count it as one of the 613. And according to Rambam, yeah, he made a mistake. The guy's off, he missed one. Right? But according to Ramban, I need to now explain what went into the Bahag's logic. Ubedibur lo yelecha. What time we got? Because I know we got a couple minutes. Ubedibur lo yelecha miniot rabot lo yelecha lo ta'aseh lo tishtahave lo ta'avdem. I noticed that the Bahag counted in lo yelecha, right? Sorry, I noticed that he didn't say the Bahag counted. We're going to see that in a little bit, right? In the Dibur of Lo Yelecha, there's a ton of mitzvot, like we pointed that out. V'im ken yeh mepi hagivura chamesh u'mepi Moshe shesh meot u'shmone. Now he says the Gemara doesn't make sense. Lo minyan Torah, it's not going to be 611. There's only going to be 608 because Lo Yelecha does 3-4 mitzvot. V'hanir'eh mida'ato shel bal halachot. Now we get to the crux of the issue. En minyan targag mitzvot ela gezerotav yit'aleh. What do we count as mitzvot? Says the Ramban according to the Bahag. The commandments. Shegazar alenu la'asot o mina'anenu shelo na'aseh. Aval ha'emunah b'mitziuto yit'aleh. Shehodia ota elenu be'otot u'b'moftim u'b'giluya shechina le'enenu. Hu ha'ikar v'ha'shoresh shemimenu nolad ha'mitzvot. Lo yimaneh b'cheshbonan. He says, according to the Bahag, it doesn't make any sense to count belief in God as a mitzvah. Belief in God is the prerequisite for the mitzvah. It can't be a mitzvah to believe in God. Who's commanding you to do that? God. No, it can't be because you don't believe in Him. What? How could believe in God be a mitzvah? It's a logical inconsistency almost, right? Believe in God. Why? Because God said so. What? Right? It doesn't make any sense. According to the Bahag, I only count the mitzvot that are God telling me to do something. And now he goes back to that mechelta, right, and uses that as a proof for the Bahag. He says, when they accept me as king, then we could talk about mitzvot. Before then, there's nothing to talk about mitzvot, right? Asu kabbalat hamalchut inyan b'fnei atzmo v'hamitzvot v'hanigzarot me'ito yit'aleh me'inyan acher. Right? He made the kabbalat malchuto, which the Ramban already says was the defining characteristic. And now you see why he did that. Okay? According to the Rambam, and let me just translate this and I'll get to that point, right? It made accepting him as king one thing, and it made the mitzvot hanigzarot another thing. The mitzvot that come from him another thing. According to the Rambam, you know why belief in God is a mitzvah? Pretty simply, because it's not just any belief in God. There's a specific type of existence that we believe in when we say God. So it's not just, stam, believe in God because God is your king, right? There's a specific mitzvah about type of God you're believing, right? according to the Ramban, it's a much more general. You make God your king. You can't have a mitzvah to make God the king, because who's commanding you? The king? You didn't make him a king yet, right? So the Ramban, by explaining the mitzvah a little bit differently, by explaining the ikar fulfillment of the mitzvah a little bit differently, actually opens up a bigger room to understand where the bahag is coming from. I think we have to stop here because we're a little bit over time. The next time we'll finish this. There's not a lot left. We'll finish this. We'll finish explaining what the bahag does with the Gemara. If Anochi isn't there, then you're missing some. How does he explain that Gemara? And then we'll move on, God willing, to our next mitzvah, which will probably be tefillah, deoraita, derabanan. What are the proofs back and forth? Unless everyone says that they really don't want to do that because they learned it a million times, they hate learning that sugya. I don't think anyone will say that, but if they do, then we'll have to take a vote. But in the meantime, everyone should have a wonderful day. I forgot about doing that. I have to keep doing that. That's the Rabbi Yitzchak at Shalom. That's how he signs off every class. In the meantime, everyone should have a wonderful day. It's such a great way to end the class.